You know, it's amazing what you can find when you look a little closer. We pass through towns and villages all the time, completely unaware of the incredible stories buried just beneath the surface. Today, we're going to dig into one of those places, a town called Nagram. And let me tell you, its history is a wild ride of conquest, power plays, and alliances you will not see coming.
So that's the big question, right? What can one small town really teach us? Well, we're about to find out. By peeling back the layers of Nagram's past, we're going to see how a single spot on the map can be a perfect snapshot of centuries of conflict and change.
All right, so our story is set in Nagram. It's a town in northern India with some seriously deep historical roots. And at first glance, yeah, it might not look all that different from any other town in the region, but believe me, its past is packed with drama. To really understand what makes Nagram tick, we have to start right at the beginning. And its beginning was, well, violent. The town's entire foundation was basically built on a repeating cycle of invasion and destruction that really set the stage for everything that came after.
I mean, just look at how fast the leadership changed hands here. First, it's founded by a local chief named Nal. He doesn't last long. His people are violently kicked out by an invader. And then that group gets completely wiped out by a sultan. It was just this brutal, rapid-fire succession. It tells you right away that Nagram was seen as a prize to be won, over and over again.
So after that initial burst of chaos, the next major change was a bit more strategic. This was a classic showdown, the established local rulers versus a brand new force that was about to change the game entirely.
So on one side, you have the Amithya Rajputs. They're the old guard, the local power. And on the other side, you've got this family led by a man named Chaudhry Azam Ali. And get this, they migrated all the way from Arabia. In a pretty huge turning point for the region, this new family manages to completely drive the Amithyas out, completely reshaping the local power structure.
And this wasn't just some temporary takeover. This family put down deep roots. They acquired a few villages, and what's absolutely incredible is that their descendants still hold a piece of Nagram to this day. We're talking 12 generations later. It's a pretty powerful example of how one single event in the distant past can create a legacy that lasts for centuries.
But look, history isn't just about the kings and conquerors, right? So who were the actual people living in Nagram through all of this drama? What was life like for them?
Well, the town was a real melting pot. You had different communities, like the respected Sayyads and Sheikhs and the warrior Chhatris. But the group to really keep an eye on here are the Kurmis. They were a community of farmers who were on the rise. They were getting wealthier, buying up land, and quietly becoming a real economic force in town.
Now, speaking of the economy, I want to show you a number, 12,000. What in the world could that possibly be?
That was the number of mounds, which is just a traditional unit of weight, of grain that was sold every year in Nagram's market. Now, when you hear that, you probably picture a massive, bustling trade hub, right? But that picture is a little misleading.
And here's the twist. That huge amount of grain wasn't even enough to feed the town's own population. This suggests Nagram's economy was way more complex than it looked. It wasn't some big export center. Most of what they produced was consumed right there at home.
Okay, so moving forward in time, Nagram's identity is about to be challenged again. But this time, the threat doesn't come from a conqueror's army. It comes from an administrator's pen.
So, a powerful prime minister named Hyder Beg Khan shows up and wants to centralize his power. He decides to move the administrative headquarters out of Nagram. And then, to really add insult to injury, he renames the entire district after himself. So just like that, Nagram is now officially located in a place called Hydergarh.
But here's the cool part. Even though the official maps all changed, the people of Nagram held on. The wider region might have been called Hydergarh, but the town itself, it stayed Nagram. It's a great reminder that a place's true identity is always so much stronger than any line on a map or official decree.
All right, now we get to the final piece of the puzzle. And honestly, it's the most fascinating part. This is where all those historical threads we've been following, the old rulers, the new landowners, the rising communities, all come crashing together during one of the biggest moments in Indian history. The year is 1857. A massive rebellion against British rule is sweeping across the country. It is chaos. People have to choose sides, and in moments like that, old loyalties are tested, and you end up with some very, very strange alliances. And here it is, the Kurmis. Remember them? The prosperous, up-and-coming community?
They needed a leader for the rebellion. And who do they turn to? The Amathia family, the very same old guard that had been driven out of power generations before. I mean, the historical irony is just incredible. You can't make this stuff up.
So why? Why would they do this? Well, as our source material explains, it all came down to the enduring legacy of Amathia influence. Even after they were defeated and replaced, their name, their reputation as leaders, was still so powerful that in a moment of absolute crisis, their old rivals turned to them for help.
So the story of Nagram really shows us that history is never a simple straight line, is it? It's a tangled, messy web of conquest and survival and alliances that you would just never expect. And it really makes you wonder, how many other ordinary places that we pass by every single day hold a forgotten history just as amazing, just waiting to be told?